Good morning, good morning. It's good to see everybody here today, and what a beautiful book, Esther. This isn't a book that's written for, movie rights or anything like that. This is a true life story. And you couldn't make a better movie script than this right here. It's an amazing story, real life account of what happened. And I encourage everybody just to read it. I read it again yesterday, last night, and it was really good. And so I redid my sermon. As you know, I'm going through the 10 Commandments and the 10 Anti-Commandments. And I was going to do the second Anti-Commandment today. But with the elders making this statement, I wanted to preach something along those lines because it'd be a little bit different. It's strange to have a statement and then a sermon that doesn't go with it. I like for things to flow. So I was up until about 12:30 last night putting this together. Forgive me if there's any typos. I'm sure there's not. And so I want to go into this a little bit. And as you know, I've never gotten political about anything that I preach on in 7.5 years. And I'm not getting political. I'm not talking about Democrat, Republican. But I'm talking about our way of life things and why this is there. And I'll be happy to talk with you later. Everything that we do and believe is biblical, okay? We're not just trying to espouse our opinion. It's okay to have opinions. Everybody's got them like belly buttons. But really, we need to be guided by God's instruction, God's guidance. And it's really, we show our subservience to God when we follow God, specifically when it goes against our opinion. A lot of times we go and do what God says because we agree with Him. He's really wise when He has the same opinion as we have. But when we follow Him, when we disagree with Him, then we show that we are His servants. And it's so key. And so I want to just start this here, this equality aspect. This goes much farther and beyond the civil rights of 1964, which gives everybody rights to do what they want anyways, that they can't be infringed upon. But this is different, because this cuts out the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, where it says that if you have a religious objection, then you don't have to do something that the government is saying that you need to do. And this will stop that. So you say, we object from having a certain type of marriage here. This would say, this new one, this Equality Act would say that we would have to have that wedding here. That we couldn't tell them no. That's a huge difference, isn't it? That's a big difference. And there's many other examples of, schooling and, hormone stopping that goes into, which is very problematic. And I wasn't planning on getting into this until May when I was talking about the 5th commandment, honor your father and mother, but just going to go into a little bit of it here because this is where we are. And because the statement that was read, and I have already called and written our senators here, and if you want to know what I've sent them, I can send it to you as well, just an example. So Romans 2, verse 11 here says, "For there is no partiality with God." And that is so true. God loves everybody and gives everybody a chance to come to Him. Christ and Jesus are for everyone. Everyone. Spirituality and Christianity is the true level ground. Because I imagine in the early church, there were slave owners, masters, and their slaves at the same church on Sunday morning. Isn't it interesting that a slave could be an elder at the church where the master was? I think that's possible. And so our church and Christianity is truly the level ground of our human race. But what does this passage say before this? Paul says, "There will be tribulation and distress for every soul of man who does evil, of the Jew first and also of the Greek. But glory and honor and peace to everyone who does good, to the Jew first and also to the Greek." So he's saying there is going to be problems. There is going to be stress. Our goal in life is not to have a life that always agrees with us, that is without stress, because that's not realistic. And so it looks like there is going to be special tribulation and struggle for those people who do evil. And that's not that they are going to be bullied against. It's because they will not have peace with God if they do evil. That's the true tribulation of life, is when you don't have peace with God. There's unsettling. Now, it's sad when people completely go to the evil side and they don't feel unsettling at all anymore. They get so callous to the Spirit of God, and God gives them over to a depraved mind that we see before that in Romans chapter 1, verses 24 through 28. And so this isn't about equal rights, but bully rights. Because what we're saying here is that people can make decisions that they want. God has given us a very pro-choice, a very free will in this life. But where God always stops it, says, your rights shouldn't infringe on other people's rights. And that's what this Equality Act goes farther, saying that people that have different way of believing that are non-Christian can come in and tell us what we can do and what we have to give approval of. And that's problematic, isn't it? That's problematic. And so I'm not getting into politics, but I'm responding to politics getting into my religion. And that's not right. Why should people tell me what I have to approve? What do I have to endorse? Especially if it goes against my religion, if it goes against my God's instructions. I've thought about, this day will come, it's coming sooner than I thought, that we'll have to choose, who are we loyal to? Are we loyal to our God? Are we loyal to our family? Are we loyal to our country? Now, it's wonderful when all three are in the same boat. But that was never going to be forever here. And for most countries, that's not true at all. So I was thinking about what is a good story, an example in the Bible to illustrate this. And as I got to hear about 4 hours about Esther yesterday, I was like, this is a great one. I was thinking about Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all good ones, but I decided to go ahead and do Esther since the kids are studying about this in Bible Bowl so much. And so they'll know a lot about it, probably more than the adults here right now. And so I encourage you to read all of Esther. It's beautiful, beautiful. It's a page turner, and you won't be able to stop until you finish it here. So I'm going to try to run through it really quickly here to give you an idea, to remind you what this is about. And I appreciate Curry reading this. So after these events in chapter 3, Mordecai was a great person. He helped save the king from a plot, a coup, okay? And so he was held in high esteem. So after these events, King Ahasuerus honored Haman later, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, all right, it's important, and promoted him and established his authority over all the officials who were with him, okay? And so to understand who this guy is and his lineage, we need to go back to 1 Samuel chapter 15. And the Lord sent you on a mission, Samuel talking to Saul, and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are exterminated. Wipe them off the face of the earth. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord, Jehovah, but rushed upon the spoil and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord? Then Saul said to Samuel, I did obey the voice of the Lord, and went on the mission on which the Lord sent me, and have brought back Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. Agag. Who's Haman? Haman, look here, is an Agagite. Okay? So Saul did not destroy the Amalekites completely. He saved the king because it was cool. Look, I got the king. And so his lineage survived. And what would you do if the Israelites, the Jewish people, almost utterly destroyed your whole people? You hate them forever. You always want to look for a way to destroy them. This is Haman. This is where Haman comes into the picture. So in verse 5, when Haman saw that Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage to him, Haman was filled with rage. So he totally hated Mordecai, but then he found out that Mordecai was a Jew. He was like, I hate all those Jews. And this is my time to have complete genocide of all of them. And so look here at Esther 5, look at his plot. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of all the people, and they do not comply with the king's laws. So it is not in the king's interest to let them remain. Does that sound similar to what's happening? If it is pleasing to the king, let it be decreed that they be eliminated. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who carry out the king's business to put into the king's treasuries. 10,000 talents of silver is estimated to be 2/3 of a yearly income of King Ahasuerus during that time. 2/3. There's no way that Haman had that money. How was he going to get it? He was going to take it from the Jews. Once he eliminated all the Jews, he would take all the wealth and then give it to the king as payment. Evil upon evil. It's not enough to eliminate the people, stop their way, but take everything that they have. Okay? So this is horrible, what Haman's planning here. Complete genocide of all the Jewish people. Now Esther has already become the queen. She became queen about 4 years before Haman was lauded up to this position. Haman does not know that Esther is a Jew. The plot thickens. If we had music, I would have played it right then. Dun, dun, dun. All right? And so this is huge. So Haman was going to use the government to destroy the Jewish people. Using the government to not just silence, but to destroy the whole people of God. Okay? And so this genocide of the Jews, including Mordecai and Esther, and Mordecai, you can look in chapter 2, verse 7, that Esther is Mordecai's uncle's daughter. Okay? Her parents died, and so he raised her as her own daughter. Okay? So that's the relation here. So there is a deep bond between these two people. And so Esther is put in a very difficult situation. She is the wife, the queen of this king who is a pagan. Okay? And there's already been a coup that we know of against his life. I imagine that happens quite a bit. And so you can only come in the presence of the king if he lowers his scepter to you. Just in case someone's coming to him and he doesn't know who it is. And so that person would be killed immediately. Now, we're going to hold trial for you. No, killed immediately. So this plot has been exposed. Okay? And so Mordecai says this. He also gave him a copy, the messenger, of the text of the edict, which has been issued in Susa, that's the capital there, for their annihilation, so that he might show Esther and inform her, and to order her to go into the king to implore his favor and plead with him for her people. I imagine Esther being in the king's temple all the time is living a sheltered life now. She's not getting the latest news, okay? Everything's taken care of. She probably never has to leave the palace grounds. And so maybe she wasn't aware of what was going on. So Mordecai, her close relative, pleaded for help. Save us. Save yourself. This is dire. This is true life. This happened. But Esther was afraid that she would be killed and said that to him with the messenger, sent that back to Mordecai. If I go into his presence and he doesn't lower the scepter to me, I'll be killed immediately. Well, what does he say here? Well, then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, liberation and rescue will arise for the Jews from another place. I love this. If you don't rise up to help God's people, then we're going to be freed from someone else, from another place. God will not be stopped. Amen. God will save his people. God will do what he's going to do, whether you step up or not. I love that. But he says, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. Isn't that wonderful? That perhaps you are in your place for this reason. And who knows who else God had called on before to step up before it got to this place. God earlier asked Saul to destroy all the Amalekites, so this wouldn't happen. Saul did not obey, and came about because of Saul's disobedience, and that's what Samuel told him. But to Saul, it made so much sense in the time, didn't it? It made so much sense to Saul. Let's just save some of the spoils. Let's save the king. It's really cool. That's what gets us in trouble all the time. I'm sure God will understand just in this time. It's really neat. It's really convenient. I'm sure you understand. And God's going, you are a curse to my people. Maybe today, but definitely later down the road. Did Saul ever see this? No. But Saul brought this on because of his disobedience. Because he wasn't doing what God asked him to do. And now it falls to Esther. And if Esther would have said no, it would fall to someone else. But God's people will be saved. God's people will always be saved because that's who God is. He's faithful. He takes care of us. And that's why this is so important. This is why it's so good for our kids to learn this story, to know this truth, so it carries with them forever. And they will pretty much have it memorized, okay? It's awesome. And so look at here at Esther chapter 7. Then Queen Esther replied, and she came up with this awesome idea of having a banquet, inviting Haman, and it made him feel really cool. Even the queen loves me, okay? And so the Queen Esther replied to the king, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me as my request and my people as my wish. Because the king had told Esther, I'll give you up to half of my kingdom because I love you so much. His previous wife, the queen, didn't do what he wanted, and that's why Esther came into the picture in the first place, okay? And so he promised Esther half. And so Esther's request is, will you just allow me to live and my people? I bet Haman's like, this is amazing. I'm so glad I have a front row seat for this. Well, we'll see. Then the King Ahasuerus asked Queen Esther, who is he and where is he who would presume to do such a thing, killing my queen, my wife? And Esther said, a foe and an enemy is this wicked Haman, this man. Then Haman became terrified before the king and queen. I bet. He was right there. And so she rose to the occasion and saved the Jews. And the king was so incensed, he left the area, and Haman realized what was going on, threw himself on the couch where the queen was. And that's right when the king came back. He says, are you going to assault my queen in front of me? Before the words came out of his mouth, they put a bag around his head and took him away. Now let's just let you know quickly how this ends. Haman hated Mordecai so much, he had built a gallows to kill Mordecai, 50 cubits, 75 feet high, outside his home so he could see it great. Those are the gallows that he was hung on. And not only did the Jews not die, but they eradicated Haman and his lineage forever at that time, his 10 sons. And the danger was averted. What's happening today? What's happening today in our life? There is a people using the government to say, stop these people's rights. They shouldn't be allowed here. Look what they're doing. Their way of living isn't right the way that we think it should be. That's exactly the words Haman used, and that's exactly the verbiage that's being used against us Christians today. Their way of life doesn't match up to the correct way of life today. It is scary times. These times are not a movie, a dystopian future. This is today that we live in. Once again, I'm not getting into politics. Responding to politics, getting into my religion, getting into my life. Do I not have a right to stop a hand that's going to slap me? Do I not have a right to teach my children what's right and wrong? That would change. It's already changing, brothers and sisters, but it's going to change immensely and overnight if this gets passed on. John 16:33, the words of our Lord Jesus. I have told you these things so that you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. That's a promise, apparently. But take heart, I have overcome the world. The war is over, but the battles have yet. This is the life that we live right now. Equality is admirable. Our God is the king of equality. But he is not a bully. He does not force himself on anybody like they're trying to force their way of thinking on us. He allows you to choose him, to accept his wonderful offer to be saved. But he doesn't force on anybody. Equality is admirable, but not at the cost of our beliefs on sexuality and gender and so forth. There is right and wrong. I'll talk about it more explicitly later. We must stand for our beliefs and our way of life like Esther did. We can't say, let someone else fight that fight. It's going to be okay. It's going to be handled later on. I just want to live my quiet life. No, you can't. It's changing. Whether you like it or not, life is changing here. The question is, what are you going to do? And you might want to do a message back to God. If I do that, it's going to be awkward. My friends would not like me anymore, whatever. Well, my brothers and sisters, do you think you're safe? Like Mordecai say, do you think you're safe in your place? Don't you think they'll come for you too? They will. They will. So perhaps we are in our place to stand for him today. And it will always in our place to stand for God. Always. The question is, are you going to do it? And God, just like back then, said, whether you stand for me or not, I will not be taken down. My people will be victorious. The war is won. I've tied up the strong man. The question is, are you going to be on my side? Are you going to do what Esther did and stand up for what's right? Now, there's a lot of gray area in things. This is not a gray area. It's not. We didn't choose this. Like Esther said, if they simply said, you know what, they're going to be enslaved, I wouldn't have said anything. But they are going to kill us. I had to say something. We're pushed to stand up. We're pushed to at least put up a hand to stop the blow that's going to smack us. The choice is up to us. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? This comes from love. This comes from love of God. This comes from love of God's commandments, the 10 commandments, all the instructions of how to live our life. It's not out of hatred of others. It's not. It's out of love of God and wanting to please God first and foremost. I hope you see that. If you have any questions, if you want to talk to this, you can talk to me, Barry, and the elders or leaders here. Because we want everything to be understood. Not just about this issue, but God's instruction. Of course, the invitation is always open. I bet it's great to be part of God's people back then. It is today as well. If you need to be a part of God's people, baptism is the way. It's the door, as Jesus is the door, and that's the way to him. Please come forward as we sing this song.